Alright, so I'm tired and discouraged a little bit because I just made a long recording, probably about 35 to 50 minutes long, and I wasn't prepared or proactive enough to see. Basically, my mouse has been glitchy for a while and I didn't get it fixed. Long story short, I clicked the record button and didn't record. Fuck me. But sticking to the and it was probably the most important message to deliver. We actually had a message. And I have a lot of stuff to do today, but if there was one thing I need to do before I drop dead, this is probably one of those kind of messages, one of those things that I really need to say, and I had so much passion in it, I put so much thought into it, and I was just in the zone. And it was immediately after recording the interaction. I just made an episode, I said, and I did, one about Christmas, and then afterwards, to those who this for it, and then afterwards, the immediate episode before this about pettiness and behavior from young couples in the past couple of years, and how delusional for a variety of different factors they've been, immature, insecure, jealous, envious, bitter, petty, vindictive, all that crap. And again, understandable to some degree for warfare, poverty, COVID, politics, SJW nonsense, other opposite extremes are radicalized, right or left wing, whatever. Technology, you can blame whatever you want, TikTok, whatever you want to do it, the red flag culture, narcissism, and the boom of psychological terminology that's been misused. But of course it's not really an excuse, and I basically, did a little dual messaging there. I gave credence and thanks, just really wanted to express myself. When I had the capacity to articulate myself, I just came back from outside at the time. And over the past 3, 4, 5 days, I've regained the capacity to articulate and express the thoughts within to others appropriately. Because it's a skill that you quickly learn back again. You don't really lose it. It just gets suppressed because I was dealing with so much sabotage and homelessness from others, and basically tried to ruin my life, whether at a local scale, within the blood, and to a neighbor and his work with, and then just expanded. But yeah, tried to ruin, but I'm not that easy to beat down, so just don't have to tell what I'm capable of, right? Why would you tell people what you're capable of? So, I guess here's the bar message then. And yeah, it was it was probably one of the most important things. And basically about 4 or 5 days ago, I said, record a message, and it wasn't very clear and very concise because it dragged on for a while, and I was able to get the point across because I couldn't talk properly. But it is directed towards, I don't think there are many people. It's okay. And it's funny that I'm trying again. It's literally just been less than an hour since I realized that the recording button wasn't pressed, and it pissed me off. And it is recording now, and I have different proactive measures now to make sure that there's a second recording on the side, so it's not all lost. And I found ways to work through that and put myself in a better headspace. So it was a learning experience, but again, a little nasty reminder that you gotta make sure you're actually recording. But also again, it was self-reflective in the sense that one of the points I delivered was trying again, perseverance, and learning how to laugh at the failures and saying, try again. And how to do that properly without taxing yourself out. I had a sip of water, ate some food, ate a little bit of oatmeal, got some shut-eye, tried to let the emotions wind down, lie down on the bed behind me and just shut down for a bit, and then prepared some things for the tasks and chores ahead for the rest of the day and the night. In fact, it's going to be for a long 6-5 hours ahead that I need to get done. And, got everything prepared, neatly wrapped so that I can think clearly. So, with that preamble out the way, how far is this in? So it says about 5 minutes 50, 5 minutes 30 seconds in. So maybe I'll just write down to skip 5:30 in the comments, but okay. Third time's the charm, right? But it's not a third time, so we'll make the best that we can of it. It's a message for the people who, at the time, when things were going south about two years ago, and there was all sorts of hostility and pettiness and bullshit, and people were just being awful, right? Awful, right? All the things I mentioned at the beginning: pettiness, aggressiveness, passive aggressiveness, bullshit, just hatred, pure vitriol everywhere you go, bullying, ostracization, self-entitlement, so much self-entitlement, arrogance, everything, malice, like real malice. People genuinely just were being most authentic and true to themselves, to the worst side of themselves, and they took the whole embracing the shadow self to a whole different level that was just totally unacceptable and intolerable. And at the time, there were people who came and they started crying when they watched me be subject to this. And at first it wasn't me when I re-entered society a little bit there. But again, I was kind of, I've worked many jobs. I've been working for at least a full decade and a half, at least 15 years. And at that time, I, voluntarily left and terminated a position because the specific department had a small group of colleagues who were just so fucking toxic. It was unbearable. Defamation, slander, bullying, ego touting, blame shifting, paper pushing bullshit and all that crap, And, no sense of self-regulation, no sense of accountability, no sense of anything that was, but then that translated from the work, and then people were behaving that way inside the household that I was living in, It was just a bad time for everyone, and people just allowed the worst. They made all sorts of, political excuses and based off of mental health to just be the most depraved version of themselves, provided that they were authentic. But authenticity and honesty and genuine authenticity doesn't mean much if you're going to be a genuine dickhead, asshole, and fucking full-blown narcissist or borderline or antisocial psychopath, None of that. None of your honesty is ever going to make up for that. It's not enough of a redeeming quality to make that worthwhile. So I was subject to a lot of that kind of crap, and at first I saw a lot of the people. There was like this, young, kind of chubby Korean kid who kept being like, insulted left, right, and center through an entire 30-minute bus ride. I saw old white man, Canadian man, sitting down with his dog, and some kid came up and said, yo, mister, why don't I take your dog and cook it and eat it? And he thought he was he thought it was funny, that kid with the broccoli hair. Like, what a fucking moron to go up to, this old man, maybe not that old, he's like 60, with his dog, his little, lovable little dog, and tell him something like this, and think that it's funny. Joke's on you. It's not, you're not telling a joke, you are the joke. And they don't realize this shit, right? Because, but it wasn't just kids, right? And this was happening. Eventually, of course, naturally, I became subject to that shit. And, to be fair, perfectly fair, I wasn't actually doing myself too many favors, but I didn't have much of a choice. So due to circumstances, it was just inevitable that was going to happen, unfortunately. Not because I was just I was warm. And when society is hostile and you're warm and friendly, people will, take that to be abnormal, and they're going to single you out. And then it's going to be a mob mentality, peer pressure, bullying, all that, ostracization, defamation, all that bullshit. And doesn't take much for people to become as cruel as they have to be to someone they don't know, to dehumanize someone, to make them to be something like a target, to dump all their baggage on. Okay? And so what I want to get to is that basically there was a lot of people at that time who were also supportive. Lovely people. People who had big hearts and, women, men, sometimes, women who were subject to ostracization, they would come and they'd start crying. They would cry for me. And I couldn't even, there was a granny who was in tears. This white old granny, this traditional Canadian granny by young Eglinton, in tears because there was this group of Filipinos who just, 45 minutes on the fucking subway from uptown all the way southtown, they just could not shut the fuck up about me making kissing noises and being so obnoxious that you could probably hear them from halfway down the other side of the train. Middle-aged ones. But it doesn't matter because there were great middle-aged women as well. And there were great men and there were great boys and great girls and great families and couples, but they were far and few in between. It seemed like the norm was just to be an obnoxious dickhead, an asshole, some crazed fuck lunatic. And there were a lot of lovely people though. And I didn't really want them to come to my aid because they would come and they would sit down and sometimes they would be directed with some of the vitriol. Again, just as much as there's no, visible uniform factor for the horrible people, right? They could have been old or young, families, couples, singles. They could have been gay or straight. And I had gay couples come up to me, and they not come up to me again. Like the worst part of all this was like they would spread gossip rumors about themselves, but they were among themselves and not include you because they're trying to exclude you, right? They're not allowing you. They're cowards. They won't allow you the opportunity to be included in their conversation. Their point is to talk with each other against you, but not ever directly to your face. Passive aggressive at its finest, right? So, and if you talk directly to them, they'll just pretend not to know, or they'll just completely dismiss you. In which case, again, it's just a way for them to go without consequence. Right? That's the main point. They're cowards. And this was rampant. Okay? And then there were people who actually had the heart to come and try to block the view or try to. There was even a man, this old white man he might have even been partly homeless. He came a little bit in tears. He tried to confront these two young Korean brats, crazy, snobbish. But again, when I say anything about I'm just using description, right? I'm not saying all Koreans like this. I'm just saying that they just happen to be Korean, so that I'm presenting you an image here. Just like there were Filipinos, there were Chinese, there were Vietnamese and Canadians who had done the same, who had been great and awful on both sides. Families who some had been awful, some were really great. And I'm trying to say here that, at the time, the people who were supporting me seemed like they themselves were not in the best spot. And I, knowing what I've been through and what I knew then, it was a kind of like a recipe for disaster, because I knew, having grown up in an environment like this, it's kind of like downtown area of a larger, greater area. What this is. I understood the whole, peer pressure, mob mentality, lack of accountability, all that crap, self-entitlement, the capacity for human cruelty. All this stuff is very big because it's like stuff that I grew up with everywhere inside the household. And I grew up down here. And I saw how awful and disgusting it all was, and I was able to find the solutions to that. But not everyone's aware, and these lovable people kind of cried and tried to support. Some of them were not in the best places in their lives themselves. Some of them felt for me because they themselves were bullied, they themselves were abused, they themselves were neglected. And I could tell that some of them had not fully recovered. They were still going through it. and they still gave their, voluntary choice to come in, help and support. And so I'm trying to be a little bit more upbeat, but these are heavy topics, I suppose. But the first take was I was actually really upbeat about things, but this is like the second take, and it's a lot to say. So I had kind of like a message I wish I could have delivered, and I really never made it. And obviously 5 days ago, or I guess the week earlier upload is just bullshit. It's not bullshit, but it's like the messaging is so messed up. I couldn't even speak properly at that time because again, of all the ruin and sabotage and the deliberate, intended, slight over the course of the years. But it's a skill I've always had that I never really lost. It's like riding a bicycle, right? 10 years down the road, if you've mastered it 10 years ago, you'll pick it up instantly, provided you just get like 2 or 3 more tries. You'll completely remember, get back 80% of the skill that you used to have. And so that's with me and like thought and articulation and executive decision making and just communication, So what did I want to say to these people? Because again, like I said, a lot of them were not in the best spot, and they knew what it was like being pushed around for nothing. A lot of them were fairly kind-hearted and warm people. I didn't know them too well. All I knew, of course, I can't pretend to know them. I'm sure that they've had their mistakes and they haven't been perfect individuals. Perfect doesn't exist. Okay, so all I know is that they went out of their way to try and support me, and I felt bad because I couldn't really talk to them directly, because that almost establishes a connection between me and them. And if anything, that will turn the entire crowd to group them with me, which is exactly the opposite of what I intended to do. But I still wanted to deliver a message, right? And there are a lot of things that, in fact, I couldn't even say because there were things I wanted to tell them to help them get through their struggles, right? And I don't need to know their specific problems to tell them what some of them clearly needed to hear. So I suppose this is very late down the road, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to deliver the message sooner, but basically if, because at this point in time, society's doing a lot better, I would say. I walk out there, people really do mind their own business now. They're not anywhere near as neurotic and paranoid or delusional or hostile or, hyper vigilant or oversensitive or obnoxious and arrogant and self-entitled. It's not quite like that. Of course, people who are inherently like this authentically still are out there. Many of them haven't changed somehow, most of them haven't, and they're just hiding it. Okay? The society, like the norm now is that's no longer acceptable, as it should be. It should never have been acceptable. But for temporary means, like it was a mass pandemonium, mass hysteria moment. And that's happened a lot of times throughout the history of humanity, so it's not anything new. But it did mean that there are a lot of people on the way who, kind of got tossed around, were subject to the lunacy. And so at this time, I don't think that there's very many. I'm pretty sure that when I go out there, most of the people, they know what they're doing now. They've wisened up, they're stronger, they're smarter. I'm talking about the people who really needed the help, who were in a bad place, a bad position at the time. And they're doing probably really, really well now compared to back then. They seem to be, independent and they're not being directed anywhere near the amount of hostility and toxicity and hatred and egotistical vanity that they were before. But, that's great. That's actually really good. And that's kind of the intention the whole time, is that I couldn't really go out there and guide people. I didn't really want to. After all, one of the things I mentioned time and time again is that I don't like to preach. I don't like to lecture. I don't like to scold. I also don't like to, by that same measure, I also don't like to, pretend like I know what I'm saying or doing, particularly in contexts where it's not appropriate. Like, this is fine. I'm just delivering my opinion on a multimedia format, It's like one of like billions of like whatever little tiny videos that are rather insignificant across the internet. it's not really anything. I'm just giving my opinion and giving a little, like, I guess it's not a speech, but I'm talking conversationally, okay, and expressing myself. And hopefully to people, I'm trying to deliver a certain message to the right people. And it's not very many of them, but you know. But yeah, I don't really like to talk up. I don't like to talk too much if it's not necessary, unless it's just, you know, conversational warmth when I'm with someone I actually know. It's like a colleague who I'm working with, or you know, stuff like that. But if it's going to be a stranger on the street, typically I try to be warm and friendly. But even that was, of course, for like a very aggressive overreaction or ridicule or scorn. And you know, it didn't have to be that way, but it was. And I think that for the people who were subject to this at the time, they didn't really know what to do. And they had a big heart, and I want to tell them at the time that I couldn't do it in some proper way where I could only tell them this message. I shouldn't be telling everyone else, because everyone else around them was very, very sadistic. They would deliberately eavesdrop on your conversations just to share it with their friends and defame you and slander you and share gossip about you, try to single people out. And so the last thing I wanted to do was deliver a heartwarming message to these people, have them become associated with me, and then they, you know what I mean? And then also in addition to that, they'll start listening to our conversations and eavesdropping and deliberately trying to throw shade here and there. And you know, it's pretty awful. It was very just like really childish behavior. So I would say, I guess now, you know, society is a lot better, but and most people have, I believe, you know, the people who were back then more vulnerable to that and were easily taken advantage of, they're not anymore. They're all matured out of it. They have strong boundaries. They're capable of standing up for themselves, and they're not pushovers, not doormats, at least not anymore. And they're not bleeding hearts. At least, even if they care and they love and they still are genuinely great people, they have the capacity to, you know, not be fazed by these big heads out there, these assholes. God forbid a number of words I could use to describe these, you know. So what would I have told them? Right, well, first of all, I think I mentioned that I didn't really want them to. So I wouldn't want you to come over here. And because I knew what I was doing. Even though I didn't say anything, I had the capacity. I had built my character and my resilience and everything that was going on. I already foresaw. I'm a 90s baby, but you don't have to be in the 90s or 80s even to know it happens in the 60s it happened with the greasers, and you know, it's always been a thing. Whenever there's a group of people, they will always have the inside, that in-group, out-group confirmation bias. This happened, you know, hundreds of years ago, even with whether or not you believe it to be real, the witch hunting, but something along those lines would have happened anyways. It happened to barbarians and tribes like thousands of years ago. It happens still to this day, in other countries, but happens even in developing countries like where am I? Do you think it matters? This is human behavior, right? So, and people can be really, really great. Humanity can be really great and can be also incredibly cruel. Okay? And knowing all that, I didn't want these people to come here and get themselves involved. And I felt that I wanted to say, for example, that I'm capable of withstanding this. And if it wasn't, you know, then I wouldn't have done it. I'm still here to this day because of that, you know. But in addition to that, I wanted to go a little further. And how far are we? We're like 24 minutes in just at this point. But I wanted to go a little further and say that, you know, for those who really needed the help at the time, that it seemed like they needed some self-esteem and encouragement, that they are the kind of people that you need in society, although they needed to develop their characters more, like develop their personality further to the point where they had the strength and power to withstand these kinds of really barbaric, horrific kind of people, right? Because these, again, like I said, there are people who are authentically just self-interested at the expense of others, and they don't see anything wrong with that. You need to understand, okay? And they would argue that there's nothing wrong with that. which is fine if it, again, in my opinion, I disagree. If it's at the expense of others, we need to have a serious talk about that. But I would have told, these people basically that, if I could pull them to the side and tell them what I need to hear, what they need to hear. And it's like 20, probably put a timestamp on it, and 5 minute 30 in as well as 25 minutes in. But yes, you can. You're capable. You can do more. You should be more confident in yourself. You don't need to cry for me. You don't need to feel bad. It was this, whether you're the quiet girl being bullied by a group of dumbass queen bee mean girls trying to, go all Gucci bags and make fun of you because you're just not attractive or some shit like that. Or you're the boy who had a stepfather beat the fuck out of you. And, I have a friend who's kind of like that, who, if you're even, a married couple, going almost like late middle aged, and you've been subject to a lot of stupid family drama just because you don't have kids. Because you decide to make the mature decision thinking that back then together, you and your husband or you and your wife knew and understood you don't have the resources or the capacity to raise a child, a son or daughter, and you decided against it because you thought it was the most responsible thing, that if you can't give your son or daughter a proper life, then you won't do it until you're ready. And maybe you were ostracized or ridiculed or humiliated or laughed at and mocked because of that from even your own blood and family members, quote unquote blood and family, not necessarily the same. I say this all the time. But yeah, whether or not you're the homeless guy, and it's not just the homeless. Sometimes, there's some really kind, loving homeless people on the street, there are some awful ones too. But let's not get this twisted, because there are rich people, wealthy people who are also really great. Not all of them are snobs and arrogant, kicking, like to spit on others. There are a lot of really great, fewer because they have a lot of power. It's easier to corrupt, but it's worth mentioning that there's a lot of great, hardworking people. In fact, my biological paternal grandfather was, he was such. He was in Vietnam, Saigon. He grew up having nothing. He was in tatters, selling fabric on the streets, This is obviously, we're talking way back to like 1920s and stuff like that, right? And him and his brother had nothing, He was one of those pushing, you push those like a horse carriage stalls around kind of thing, but yet he didn't have a horse, obviously. And eventually grew it until he had assets, and then he met a significant other, which would be, of course, my biological grandmother. And, they built a business, they turned it into a factory, they hired staff, they grew, and then by the end of it, he became a philanthropist, and he gave back. He built an entire hospital with the money that he had to give back to the community. Because that's what, that's just the kind of man that he was. And so I want to say for sure, there are some lovely, wealthy people too. They're not all, people who want to be emotional parasites and just find amusement in kicking other people down. There are a lot of really wealthy people who are really great too. Just like in any creed, just like in any race I've had. Like I said, I've had, people of every single race, every single country treat me poorly, and others treat me really well. Others be really sadistic and find amusement, and others just are lovable, warm, caring human beings. But usually the latter is the one that needs this kind of talk, and some of them don't learn it early enough. But eventually, I do believe, here's another reason why I didn't want to say too much, is because I want to have faith. I want to trust and believe in the capacity of people to figure things out on their own and come to terms and experience the trials and tribulations of life, and be capable of, they are capable of overcoming. And I guess this is going to be a message I'm going to get to soon. I should get to sooner than later. But, like I said, that's why I don't like to be outspoken unless, that's the right word. I don't want to be outspoken unless absolutely necessary. But there are people who need to hear that message, and there were more of them back then. I think most people now have. Not only is there less selective pressure, very intensely negative selective pressure, most of it's gone now. Not gone, it's just hidden. It's not outward in the public, on the transit, in the store, in business, at work. Now it's hidden. People are putting on a mask now. People who are really awful are now recognizing that they're no longer allowed to be this way without repercussions, at least socially. Okay. But that doesn't mean it's still not there. Thankfully, by this point, most people, I believe, go out there know what it's like now, right? They know what's the people who needed to strengthen themselves, to make themselves less vulnerable, know what it's like, how to operate and manage themselves when surrounded by people they don't know who may or may not be really, really awful. And I just want to say that if, by any chance, there's still someone out there, okay, who doesn't have that kind of self-esteem or composure or, yada yada yada, whatever the mindset or the experience to beat back against. And then I want to tell you that you can and you will. But of course, I don't really know anyone, and I prefer to speak for myself. But here's the kind of message I would give, because there was one point in time, right? I think for most of us, well, in this case for me, I'm going to speak personally, where I wasn't as capable, and this was a long time ago. And I never really had a choice, right? Because in the household I was in, it was always, imagine having been put into this world by people who, instead of, the standard, people who are supposed to love you, demonstrate that, they would rather you not have been brought forth into this world, They would rather you just be dead, and demonstrate hatred instead of love, demonstrate ostracization instead of inclusion, try to demonstrate, bitterness and resentment, and pettiness, instead of warmth and comfort and care. So I guess I should tell you, right? I don't think that this is the first time you'll be receiving this message, but if by some chance there's still someone out there who, still hasn't overcome or found the answers, or you're struggling or something, sometimes you just struggle to remind yourself of what you need to hear. And I want to tell you that yes, you can. You are capable. You're smart, you're intelligent, and more importantly, that you're genuinely caring. You're one of the few who happen to have just a really good heart, and you're the consistent ones, because there's a lot of people who, when they are born in poverty or whatever, they will switch up. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you're necessarily by default a better person. Just like if you're rich, it doesn't mean you're necessarily a horrible person, right? There's a greater chance of it because, trust fund babies and spoiled silver spoons and all that shit, like hip-hop talk. And then there's also, of course, when you know the struggle, of course, it's easier for you to understand the plight of others. But that's not necessarily true, because a lot of people get led astray to start doing, all sorts of horrific things that come at the expense of others. Dog-eat-dog world down in the ghetto slums. Sometimes people turn to drugs and alcoholics and stuff like that, and, they don't do the most favorable things, I'm not here to judge. No, I don't get to do that. I'm just doing this because there's some people who need to get the right message, and I think it would benefit them, and also because I've been pushed to do this. I didn't want to speak up. I just have to now, because society's gone so bad that there's no point in me holding back anymore. I'm just gonna say what needs to be said, because it's that atrocious that now I'm warranted to speak up. So for the few of you out there who maybe still haven't learned, I hope you have the confidence and you find the self-esteem, because if this is the first time anyone's telling you that you are capable, that you're better than what someone has told you're worth, then they need to fuck themselves, okay? Because I'm not trying to tell you that you're, rainbows and sunshine and ponytails and lollipops and that you can do anything and everything in the world, because that's a lie. That's that whole, SJW victim mentality shit, all that, thinking that you can do everything in the whole world, that you could, you're some gifted kid and then you're entitled to achieve success. No, of course that's not my message. My message is simply that if you're in a situation where, like I said, you're that quiet girl that gets harassed by other girls and, God forbid that sass and, trying to exclude you from everything and trying to make you as little of a person as they want you to be so that they can control you and get amusement out of you, or you're that kid in the class who, had like some really abusive parents, or you're an adult and you're being harassed at work, or you're in a really toxic relationship and your partner is not much of a partner, or maybe you're just a family drama and you have a really loving wife and husband, but then the others around you, your married in-laws or whatnot, treat you like shit because of like certain standards. They don't like your appearance, they don't like your wealth, they don't like the fact that you come from a different class or socioeconomic class or some bullshit like that. Okay. Some people don't like, people used to bully not just too long ago, like saying you because of sexual orientation. Right? If you were like straight, they'd be like, oh, you cis white man, or some fucking dumb shit like that. Or other people would then retaliate and then do something also really awful and be like, oh, you really, really simpish gay man. I was like, what the fuck is all this, right? Or, it could be gender wars, people hating on women hating on men, we had all that kind of bullshit too. And there was a lot of political stuff from all the countries too. So maybe mainlanders or really snobbish Hong Kongers. And again, there are some really great people from those countries as well, but it was just really a cesspool at the time. And if anyone is basically kind of trying to put you down and you've been resilient, and this message doesn't apply to everyone, because yeah, there will be some people who are watching this and they're the fucking assholes who decide to try to kick other people down for their own amusement. Well, fuck you, all right? Up the ass around the corner. That's how we do things in our city. Right? Growing up in the 90s, there's a lot of people like that, okay? But I'm not talking to them. I'm not talking to you assholes. I'm talking to the right people right now. People who really need to hear this message. The people who need more confidence, who need a little bit of support, who need a little bit of rapport. Not the ones who have too much rapport. Those who have too much ego have become self-conceited and arrogant and, all that shit. You need to humble yourself. You need to sit the fuck down, get off your high horse. I'm talking about the people who actually need it. Don't listen to them, okay? Don't listen to them. I'm not saying that sometimes you can't be realistic, because you can't do everything in the whole wide world, but it's not important for you to necessarily become the best at everything. I'm just saying become the best version of yourselves, and the way that they deliver the message is actually not trying to, make you realistic with the world, with what you can actually do. They're just trying to put you down and make you as small as possible so they can control you. And some of them even find that hilarious. Yeah, life is cruel. Yeah, there are people who do great things and are really, really kind, loving people, and they suffer all their lives. There are people who just never see the end of the light of tunnel. And there are really, really awful, shitty, horrific people, and some of them will get away with everything throughout the rest of their lives. That's the cold hard truth. But I don't want to endorse any sort of defeatist, escapist mentality, some kind of like nihilism, because that doesn't prevent you. It's not an excuse. An excuse sounds dismissive. Maybe I'll use a different word, right? It's not that. The excuse is that you still have reason to do better. The fact that we don't live in a perfect world where, proper fairness and justice is served isn't a reason for you to not try and at least accomplish what you can accomplish with your own two hands, as a man, as a woman, for the ones you love, for the ones you care for, the right people here I'm talking, right? The right people who need to hear this. There are a lot of people who probably don't need to hear stuff like this. And there are furthermore people who really don't deserve to hear stuff like this. But there are some of you who really do, and you've been consistent, and you've been on the grind. And for every time you're on the grind and you're staying true to yourself as someone who is hardworking and responsible and uses comedy and humor to uplift people instead of tear people down. You don't step on other people to get ahead without at least some sort of like justified due cause or some due diligence, right? You actually have a conscience. You actually try. You try to have a heart. You try to have some humanity. Okay? and you're consistent with it, you push through despite all the numerous constant hurdles trying to and encourage you to do the opposite. You beat back and fight against the grain, and you're resilient. And no pain, no gain, right? Eventually, through all these obstacles and circumstances, you become stronger and stronger and become more resilient. And eventually, just doing the better thing just becomes natural and easy. And that's kind of where I've been at for a long time anyways. I just was surprised that it wasn't like the case like this for everyone else, which speaks to a little bit of my own. I'm gonna admit, right, this is my own naivety. I didn't realize, and I should have to a degree, that just because there's like the world's in shit and flames and like pandemic and everything and war doesn't mean that people will smarten up. In fact, some people will just become worse and use that as an excuse to become less than they are. So many couples, how many of them have picked on the kind of person I'm speaking to right now and use, like, again, jealousy and deceit and envy and think they can project that onto you when you don't feel any of that at all. That's because that's just not who you are. But because they themselves were faking it during those like 2010s, right, where victim mentality and the crazy left nonsense was rampant, and even the far right was also rampant with self-entitlement and stuff like that. These kind of people like to project their jealousy or anger or their sensitivities or whatever onto you, and envy and bitterness and resentment, and you just don't feel that shit, right? You just don't, unless you really have to be provoked and pushed to the very far limits, but it's just not something that is attuned to you. And I want to let you know that you're on the right path. And of course, who the fuck am I to say something like this, because you don't know me, I don't know you, I'm just some random guy, probably 3,000 miles away in the opposite side of the earth. Facts. But it doesn't mean that I still want to say this, because I think you're great. People like you out there who have persisted, people out there who have I've seen people like this, like, again, the people who would try to block the way. Some of them were actually in tears themselves, some of them really cared, some of them really want, and I didn't want them to get involved. And I said, rather, the better option is, I would prefer if you kind of focus on yourself. I can handle this. I can just kind of even be the decoy. It's not some martyrdom, it's not self-sacrificial, because I know I can take it, I can handle it. I don't care if it's Tiananmen fucking Square. It's like 6.7 million people in this city, this greater area that I'm in. But if it was like 8 billion people, and I had to stand up against it, well, why the fuck not? Because I'm not gonna live my life a fucking coward and allow this shit to go, because that's not a life worth living. Not in my eyes, anyways. Like, that's not. I don't know what you see, but if I cowed and bowed my head down to that kind of, I don't know how I could live with myself like that, man. I guess other people don't even give a shit, but But those of you out there who have been there, I want you to hear that that yes, you can. If someone's been putting you down, your ex, your husband, your wife, your whatever, your family members, or your just some bully, some asshole, you're great. You can accomplish more. You can get that career. You can, find the self-esteem, the confidence. You can become smarter, faster, more well-rounded. Cut off the bad fruit, the low-hanging fruit, the people who are not positive and kind of toxic and trying to drag you down, and surround yourself with people who are actually genuinely like-mindedly caring and loving and are productive and want to make society and community and as a whole and this world as a whole better in as much as possible, in as much as reasonably possible. I have to say that again, because keeping in tune with being a little bit realistic, it's not all sunshine, rainbows, ponytails, but you can do the best that you can be, and that's enough. And for those of you out there who are the ones who will go the extra mile, provide that benefit of doubt. Like I said, I like to give the benefit of doubt. I like to give good faith. I'd like to think that people are capable of making their own decisions and growing, and capable of, wisening up through experience. Because, and here's the thing about wisdom, right? Wisdom is more the differentiating factor between wisdom and knowledge, of course, is, well, I guess I say of course, but it's not obvious to everyone. But basically, it's something that will reveal itself time and time again over a long period of time. No pun intended, because it's something that's more universal and less circumstantial. Although, let's be clear, even pieces of wisdom and advice, you need to apply them in the right context, in the right circumstance, the right situation. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution or a blanket or umbrella solution. But the fact is, unlike knowledge, which is just like smarts, there's like, the standard saying is that I've met a lot of people who are smart but not wise, and wise but not that smart. And they're not mutually exclusive, but they're also not the same. So regardless of whether or not you listen or not, right? Some of these people, they will learn through time what the mistakes are, but there's also great people like you, and I wish there was a way for you to learn things without going through the hard struggles, without being harassed 24/7 and have to figure things out the hard way. Because there is a better way, and here's where I'm kind of, I apologize. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to capitalize on the platform that I had to do this, because I myself was going through so much. I was also going through a lot of self-sabotage, but also external sabotage coming from others, from bad actors onto me. And for every time I would hold some kind of self-restraint, they wouldn't hold back at all, right? And it could be over tiny things that I don't even notice. I'm like, how can you be this like paranoid or delusional or oversensitive? I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing that's pissing you off, or making you feel like you need to be this awful, condescending, patronizing, humiliating freak of nature. But there are people like that, right? And of course, I know how to deal with that. I think that you can too. You can learn how to stand up against these people. And at this point in time, I'm fairly confident that a lot of the people who were at the time were vulnerable. You're all capable of now having the power, the money, the stature, the social network to beat back against that. Because you do have to beat them at their own game. These people here, make no mistake, some of them will change. Yes, some of them are not truly awful, but there's quite a few of them actually who thrive in the power and conceit, and they will not stop. They will simply just hide it when it's convenient, and then they will show it when there are no consequences. So there are a lot of them who are just wearing masks now, because it's no longer socially acceptable to be a fucking asshole to random strangers, but they're still there. And some of them still do it in the public, and they don't give a shit, right? But you can do better. And if they have told you this wrong messaging throughout your entire life, maybe your entire life in the household or at work or at school or whatever or not, you've been told that you should be less than what you are, that you'll never amount to anything. They kind of scorn you in front of, it's like they just like burst out in amusement, laughing their asses off at how much they feel they are better than you. You're already better than them in my eyes, just for having a heart, for not succumbing to their standards, for having the resilience and the perseverance. But you can improve on that further, and I want you to know that yes, you can. And if you haven't already found that within you, and again, I think most people have, but on the off chance that there's one person out there, and even just one person, one or two, but if it's just one person who gets this message, it'd be all worthwhile. You can save this message, you can clip it, you can record it, and you should just stop this message right now. Stop this video, this recording, this podcast, this media file, and just repeat it after me. Like, just say that I'm worthwhile, that I can be loved, that I am capable, and yes, you are. All right, you're not God, you're not some, don't go off the rails, but you know what I'm trying to say. You're the kind of person who needs to hear that, and because you're probably the person who has more self-control and self-restraint. You might be the person who, once when granted power, has the capacity to regulate oneself and to manage that, even though it's very easy to corrupt people and tempt people in high positions of power. You might be the kind of person given what you've been through and the consistency through which you've shown your resilience and character and integrity, you're the kind of person who actually is worth leadership. You're the kind of person who's worth being a leader one day. And I want to kind of cultivate that, let you know that you are capable of doing that. And if it first starts off, if I'm the first person, I hope it's not, I don't believe it is. At this point, I'm sure that you have some close friends or acquaintances even, but like probably a partner, a spouse, husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or maybe you're married, you have adult children, your kids or your grandkids, or other forms of family, maybe a tutor, a coach, a mentor, a sifu, someone out there who can actually, direct you in the right path and say that you're capable, you have so much potential. You do. And I believe that. And I wanna think that you can. Okay. But it's not just a want, right? Because there are so many people out there who are downtrodden because the people around them and the environment they're surrounded with is so poisonous and so debilitating and so discouraging, filled with open acts of like people using emotion to manipulate and take advantage of, using fear, guilt, shame, and anger and rage in all the wrong ways. Because believe me, there is a purpose for shame. You should feel ashamed if you do something awful. Those people don't, but you do, and you probably feel shame too much. Some people should feel guilty, and there are certain acts that should beget guilt, should beget fear. There are certain things that you should be afraid of. There are certain things that you should, but for each and every single one of these, there's a specific circumstance where it's appropriate, and there are many circumstances where they are not, where you shouldn't be afraid, where you shouldn't feel guilt. In fact, you should feel the opposite, where you should feel, instead of fear, you should be overcoming it with courage and be triumphant over your fears. If someone's harassing you and like that, you can have the resilience, you can have the courage to overcome that. You don't even have to feel anything. I can tell you that for a fact. I don't even understand what this fear stuff is, because this is something that I had to overcome at a very early stage in life. And that begets, for a lot of people, because they feel the fear of social exclusion, they actually turn to things like jealousy and envy as an answer to their problems, when it's not. It just makes them less than who they are, right? I've had so many examples of, especially young couples, but even old couples, even family members group and band together like this fucking mob, thinking that, like cowards that they are, 10 people picking on one person behind their back, never including them directly face to face in a conversation, right? Think that makes them better than you in some way, or that makes you less than what they are, which is not the truth, obviously. Okay? You can be better, you are stronger, and if you have to stop and record this and clip this and then just repeat after that, just say that you are better, because behavior becomes thought, thought becomes action, action becomes behavior, behavior becomes you. Eventually, maybe it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but maybe a week down the road after doing this, you just save it, record it, and then make yourself do this. You wake up in the morning, you get up on your feet, you go to the goddamn washroom, you look in the mirror and you tell yourself this. You repeat it 3 times. And maybe you don't believe in it yet, but at least you were able to muster it because you couldn't say that before. And then 2 days down the road, you say it this time with conviction, because you actually are able to somewhat be convinced by that. And then a week down the road, you're not just convinced, you actually believe. And then a month later, you actually know yourself to be, and you no longer need to, again, this is some stranger, half a million miles away, that song. And you don't need me to tell you this, and I don't want to have to tell you this, because here's the thing, right? Not only are you capable, but that's what I know what it's like, obviously, to I don't want you to be dependent on me. This is about parenting now, going to be a little bit, but when I raised, he wasn't my biological son, but all the more the merrier, whatever, it doesn't matter anyway, because my point is that it wasn't a permissive parenting style, nor was it an authoritarian parenting style. I didn't scream or shout and kick or beat or trying to put him down every time he didn't do something I didn't like or anything like that. Nor did I, be like a total doormat and just let him do whatever the fuck he wants and say, if he does something horrible, I'm just gonna be like, oh, it's okay, I still love you, you're doing a great job. No, I would be civil with him. I had a down-to-earth, I think it's called authoritative versus authoritarian approach, where I'm trying to just basically encourage him to make his own decisions, and I will give him my honest opinions about what he's done wrong, if he has done it. And I'm going to have a laissez-faire approach too, though, and say that, I respect you enough eventually down the road, because kids are smart. They are. Children are really smart. Okay? They're like a blank slate, tabula rasa, René Descartes. And they can learn so much really quickly and adapt really quickly. But sometimes get led astray. Some of them are naive. Some of them get misguided because they join the wrong peer circles, the wrong friend groups, and then they get led astray. Adults do this all the time. Seniors and old grannies and grandpas do the same shit. You would be surprised. I volunteer in a seniors home, and you would be surprised at the kind of like child like recess like type behavior, harassment, bullying that would happen, exclusion that would happen in people who were like basically 70 and 80 years old. Right? This is just like human behavior once again. But getting back to the point, I don't ever want you to be dependent on me, because you don't need to be, and I don't want you to be. And if somebody tries to make you dependent on them, but you don't need my recording, you don't even need me to talk to you. I don't. Maybe in the moment you do, right? But you won't need that, and that's the best feeling in the world, because at some point I say, when you can make your own decisions, you're gonna make your own mistakes. And when you do, you're also going to learn from other people, because I'm fallible. I'm not perfect. No one is. No parent is perfect, okay? No coach, no mentor is perfect. I'm going to have my own mistakes, my own shortcomings. And in fact, I'd rather you also learn more from your peers as well. And you're going to make mistakes. And I'm going to let you make some of those mistakes, unless they're so atrocious that they're irreversible and they're going to basically ruin your health and stuff like that, right? But, because I trust you to eventually develop the maturity through experience, and I'll play more like a guiding role. I'll listen to you. I'll hear you out, right? When you're down, I'll lend you a hand. But I'm not going to control you. I don't own you. You're not my possession. You don't owe me anything. You don't even owe me your attention or your love. You're your own independent person. And one day you're going to be a man. You're going to stand on your own 2 feet, and that's going to be the happiest moment of my life. When you're no longer part of my life, right? Not, I don't mean that way, but when you're capable of standing, the wings spread and fly off, you're capable of doing that on your own. You don't need me. And because this is the exact opposite of what a narcissist would do. And I know what that's like, all right? For those of you who have been beat down, who've been ostracized, excluded, whether it's like female, like woman, the way women treat each other, like sometimes female bullying, but also like little boys bullying each other, all that bullshit, fucking nonsense, right? Passive aggressive, direct hostile aggression, all that shit, physical, verbal, whatever it is, just to make themselves feel better, make you inferior so that they can make themselves boost their own ego and feel superior about themselves, which is superficial and fake, because that's not really how the situation is. They just want to make themselves feel better. They're in their feelings, and they're using you like a tool, hammer to a wrench, okay, nail on the wooden stud. But you don't have to be a casualty. You don't have to be a casualty, no, okay? Because you're better than that. And they're trying to make you less than what you are, so that, it's for shits and giggles. But you can do that on your own. You don't need me to tell you this, and you can practice that, somewhere down the road, if like a month passes by, you won't need this. Not only will you know so and believe so, you won't need this recording, but you can tell yourself so. And then on top of that, if a month passes by, you start to, hopefully have the confidence to seek out the right people and also remove the wrong kind of people from your life. And then down the road, the hope, the intention is that eventually you'll have family, loved ones, friends, colleagues, who are the right kind of people in your life who can support you. And because you are, like I said, we're all imperfect. We're not angels, we're not saints, we're not God, we're not omnipotent, we're not deities. Sometimes you will, be fallible, and your confidence will waver. You'll get thrown so many curveballs by life that you're gonna break down a little bit, and you're gonna question yourself, you're gonna doubt, and then you're gonna start to get a little bit defeated. By that point in time, not only are so far beyond that point, you'll have your own circle of friends, and they will remind you that you are good, you're great, you're capable, you're strong, and you can surpass all of these obstacles and hurdles. Again, without excessive arrogance, without excessive confidence that turns into cockiness and braggadociousness and self-entitlement. Just enough to be confident and firm and assertive, without too much pride or vanity or ego. To be self-confident, assured in yourself, and secure, as opposed to being insecure and having to create a fake image by taking other people down to your own level. Okay? Like true confidence. I'm not talking about the fake facade, the fake shit. Okay? Real shit. Okay? We ain't talking. We ain't deal with that stainless silver spoon ass motherfucking bullshit. Okay? Not those trust fund babies. Not that kind of stuff. We're talking about real confidence. Okay? Yes, you can. You can. And I don't know who told you otherwise, but they're full of shit. And you need to know that. You can. So start there. Tell yourself this. Stop this video. Do it. Tell yourself this. Record it, clip it, save it. I don't know what you need to do. Maybe wake up tomorrow morning and then you'll repeat that. And then repeat that again the next day. And then the next week until you know it. You know so. Okay? Because they've been brainwashing you. And like I said, I know what that's like to be under the grasp and control of a narcissist. This is the same reason why that I didn't, a lot of people have actually been kind of disillusioned with me. I've even delivered messaging that was, kind of contrary to what they wanted to hear. And at times, if you couldn't tell a couple weeks ago, but even a couple days ago, the messaging was kind of negative because I wasn't able to articulate. But at some point, when it first began, I already made the decision not to articulate myself too frequently, not to be outspoken or loud too frequently, just sporadically when necessary, because when it was going to be effective. And that's because, again, playing on the same theme, I don't want you to be dependent on me. I don't want other people to be codependent on me. It never works over the long term. A healthy relationship doesn't need two people to hold on to each other like crutches, because life is so turbulent and so filled with so much turmoil and wrath and unpredictability and unfairness and cruelty and tragedy that there will always be a time that you're going to be separated from a loved one, from someone you need to depend on. So it's never healthy to actually need someone to be there for you all the time. You need to be there for yourself. That's it. Again, you need to be there for yourself. You can't help others if you can't be there, if you can't even help yourself. And other people can't help you if you can't even start to help yourself either. That's just taking, again, internal, personal responsibility, holding yourself accountable. But on top of that, some people really need to hear this because they've been brainwashed, right? They've been under the control and grasp of some control freak, some petty person who thinks that, they're doing you a favor. I know what that's like, right? In the household with these two freaks who seem to think that, they think they have the best intentions, and you're like, by beating you and screaming at you and holding you by the neck and never smiling, just always scorning you, showing you hatred. They're like, they think this tough love approach, that they're gonna make you perfect. It's for your own good. They're in the right. They're doing you a favor. They're not. They are not. And if they have even a glimmer of the right intentions, then at least we can say that their delivery and the way they're delivering the message is all wrong. Most of it, however, is actually false messaging. They're just saying that part of that is because they have the wrong delivery message system. They're communicating themselves in the wrong way, but that actually works against the message, works against the results that they're trying to attain from you. And sometimes those messages aren't even right at all, because they're treating you like a trophy. You represent something to them. You're a possession, right? That's what they see you as, and they're not able to realize and become self-aware of it until it's too late. Like, you don't have to be dependent on that, and you can get to a point where you can do better, where you can surround yourself with people who also are self-dependent, not egotistical, not shallow or superficial, not those who are using fake confidence or fake facade. People who are real to the bone, have real self-esteem, real courage, right? They don't overcome fear by actually making everyone else around them fear them. They actually just have courage to beat back people who are really hostile, right? So they overcome the fear genuinely with the right solutions, and they don't, at some point, they just don't feel it anymore. And I am speaking personally, of course, but there are people like this, okay? And you can surround it. You can get to that point too. Not everyone can. Again, I'm not going to give you some fake pretentious thing like, the world's, everybody can accomplish everything, but at the very least, like I said, you can do much better. My point is, you can do much better than what they're telling you. They're leading you on, and they don't have they don't have your best interests in mind. They just want to use you for their own self-satisfaction and ego. But you can do better. I don't think there's a whole lot of people who need to hear this anymore, to be honest. I think most people have kind of wisened up. Maybe sometimes people need a reminder. But if there's, again, just one person out there who for some reason hasn't received it yet, and they really need to hear this, then that's good enough for me. I think that's where I'm going to try to leave it off, because I do have a lot of stuff I need to get to. But again, I'm sorry. I wish I would have said this 3 years ago, when a lot of people really need to hear this, a lot of the right people need to hear this, but I just was not in the right place. I apologize. But you can do better. And again, the whole point of this, whole time for me being silent as much as possible or not being too outspoken is because I really wanted to put my faith and trust in and really believe at the beginning, right before I got so tired and like annoyed. The original intention was that. And still to this day, because I tell oftentimes, I don't say, people know, I think, at this point, before they didn't know. But I don't really say oftentimes. I would say maybe a lot of times I say things that I don't fully commit or believe in necessarily, but it's not out of manipulation. There are people who do that to manipulate. I'm doing that to guide. And the difference between guidance and manipulation obviously is in the affinity of the consequences. What do you intend? Do you intend for a positive and productive well-being? Are you trying to make them better? Or are you trying to tear them apart at your own self-expense? Is it negative? Is it negative or is it positive? Are you being helpful? Or are you being Are you trying to detract from them? Right? Obviously, you can tell. My point is, I'm the devil's advocate. I will tell people things that they need to hear to get some sort of self-awareness. Usually, once again, saying something is not usually a reflection of others more in as much as it is of yourself. And for me, being aware of this, sometimes I use that in reverse, because playing the devil's advocate, I sometimes say things to make people become aware of either what they're doing wrong, right? Either become what they do and show them, because some people just lack so much self-awareness that no matter what you say to them, they won't realize it until you show them by becoming just as obnoxious and arrogant as them, and they realize, but then they think that you're doing it because you're out of hypocrisy. You think, oh, see, look, you're so, you're awful too. No, I'm just doing this to show you what you look like, how you are, how you behave, how much of a fool you are, how awful you are. You're treating your friends and random strangers on on your everyday basis, just so you know. But some of them will never realize that, and that's not important, because the most important thing, again, I don't care about appearance or status. I could look like a fucking deadbeat. At the end of the day, appearance for me and status is just a tool. It's not important. What's important for me are far more important things, like your loved ones and your purpose and your character and your integrity. Who the fuck cares about whether or not you have a Gucci bag, whether or not I have like clean skin, like bright skin. Clean skin is healthy skin, which is important. Health is important, but appearance is it matters, but it's really pretty low on the rung of priorities. Okay? It's not totally unimportant. So I would say like 80-20 Pareto, right? 80% of the time I just say things that people need to hear. And in this case, yeah, sometimes I'm the devil's advocate and tell the people who need to change because they're awful. I show them what they're like. And they still never realize, which is why I left the workplace in the previous one, where there's like 23 colleagues and a lot of them just didn't have a capacity to become self-aware. Even when I showed them what they were like, they thought I just changed. But actually a lot of it was because I was just trying to show them what they're like, and they hated it. I said, I told you you wouldn't like it. If I became like you wouldn't like it. If you saw yourself in the mirror, you wouldn't like it. But they never came to the realization. So I just left. But then I also, and so in the same notion, by the same token, I tell people like you, the few good people out there, I tell you what you need to hear. And in this case, it's not the devil's advocate. I want you to become the best version of yourself. I'm telling you the things that I wish that will hopefully dispel all the brainwashing and the kind of like slander and propaganda on a personal relationship level that they've used to try to take you down to their level so that they could make themselves feel better about themselves. You're more than that. People like you are, the kind of people we need in society. And I hope you know that, and you can work on yourself. And I don't think there's a lot of people who need to hear this anymore because, I presume that things are, but if there's even just one person out there who needs to hear it, hopefully they find this message. Okay? Work on yourself. You are capable. You can do better. Now I need to get to my shit. So, Happy New Year. All the best to you and the New Year resolutions. Okay? And just, do your best. Do your best. Sometimes that's all you need to do. But your best clearly isn't what they're telling you it is. You can figure that out on your own. Sometimes you just need a little push, and I can sort of push you there, maybe. And then you can eventually start pushing yourself, and eventually you'll accomplish things you could never imagine. You'll find yourself in the right circles with people you never thought you would ever be surrounded by, and life will be good.